Hey, welcome to RapidMCP. This is a platform where it can convert existing REST APIs into MPC servers in minutes. Essentially, I came up with this idea because I run another startup called Cloudly, and I was attempting to build an MCP server for this, and I realized it's buggy. There's not enough auditing, and I really struggled with this. And then I thought, wouldn't it be great if there was a tool where we can host all the MCP logic and then just point to existing APIs. So if you have a legacy REST API, or you're not, a coder or anything, you could convert that REST API into an MCP server using this platform. We've launched on Product Hunt, and we got 5th of the day. And so you can see here that there's 264 votes, and so you can see here that it's hitting the mark with people. Quick overview is like when you come in here, you'll create your MCP server. First, you'll create a tool definition, then you will specify the tool variables, and then you'll map it to your existing REST API. It's got different logging and auditing, so you can see all the tool calls going on inside your MCP server. So if I log in, it's got the usual SSO login stuff. And then once you're logged in, this is where you can manage your MCP server. So you can see the tool calls that it's done, the MCP server URL, status online, etc. Editing the server is where we specify everything. So in the one server, here are the tool calls for your MCP. This is where you would map an existing API to a MCP tool call. So in this example, if we edit this tool, this is listing the Cloudly plans. So as the tool name, this becomes the tool description. It could be whatever, but this is visible to the model. So it should be descriptive enough that the model knows when to call this endpoint. Are there any arguments that the model should call? Are they required or not? So you can uncheck that or check that. And then the tool trigger will be the REST API. This is your REST API. So the HTTP method, the endpoint, any headers, any bodies. And here is where we map the tool arguments, being the timestamp, which is what the model comes up with. This can be anything, to your HTTP REST endpoint. So if I wanted to say, okay, if the model's going to call timestamp, that's what I could use. But say I wanted to put another property on here. I want the model to define timestamp, and I want the model to define message. That would mean that I might be able to change this to message as an example, like this. Cool. And then once I've saved that, I've configured the tool. You can add prompts as well. So this is the MCP definition for prompting, and here is some sample setup docs. So Cursor, Windsurf, Claude, OpenAI. There's going to be way more over time, but this is just the example here. So another thing that people say a lot of the time is, I move myself, is how do I this is the MCP server JSON config, and I can easily put the URL, but how do I authenticate it? There's this headers property here at the MCP server level where you can add the authorization tokens for your endpoints. So if this is where the MCP server is hosted, you can add headers here that will then automatically get added to every tool in this server. So it's kind of like a proxy. So anything here will get added to any tool, and when the tool gets invoked, it will add these headers. So just to complete that example, say you had numerous tools with different authentications. You would either need to put each authentication here, like in mapping it as a header. So API key 1, API key 2 for the second tool, example, for etc. Or you could create 2 MCP servers. So maybe one MCP server for dev, one MCP server for prod, and then or you don't have to specify any headers, and you can just put this header here. Another very handy thing to note is, say you want to put in custom variables as well at the MCP server level, and not the tool configuration level. So let's say you've got a dynamic site subdomain, myapp1.companyname or myapp2.companyname.com, etc. This is where you could specify a dynamic header. So any variable, subdomain, version, API version number, something like that. You would put that here at this one. So you'd have subdomain, and then maybe you'd put your variable here, which would be version 1 or version 2 or something like that. And then this property would be available for interpolation in the tool. So going back to the tool, you could say edit, and this is where maybe you put your subdomain in as an example. So we've got the live server logs over here. There's a help section. There's also an admin section in here, and settings and billing. So yeah, that's just a quick demo on an intro demo to RapidMCP.